All right, so the next few class periods, we're going to concentrate on the importance of drilling and how to plan drill and the characteristics of a good drill, and then finally executing that drill. The next two class periods too, we're going to be practicing. So you're going to need to be preparing a practice drill. So let's begin with the lecture notes. Drilling, the importance of drilling. All right, so with our drilling procedures, we need to begin before we start talking the nitty-gritty details of what to drill and how to drill. We need to talk about the importance of drill. Drill is essential to memorization of critical facts. And then also it's essential to the memorization of critical facts and needed terminology. So drill is essential to memorization of critical facts and needed terminology. All right, if you remember the 7 steps of the teaching procedure, what is the first one? Terminology. What's the key for terminology? Use it. Teacher uses it, the students use it, and we also drill it. But then the second step is math facts. What's the key for math facts? Automatic. How are we going to achieve automatic math facts so that we can understand concept and so we can teach procedure? Of course, expansion is next. Application is last. What's the 6th idea? Problem areas. What's going to happen if we don't know? If we don't know and our facts aren't automatic. I think I'm going to draw the arrow the other way. Problems. Okay, so drill is essential to memorization of critical math facts and needed terminology. All right, so we're going to work on using the terminology after we've kind of memorized it. But the main thing that we're going to concentrate on are our critical math facts. We have to memorize our math facts so we can work to understand the concept, and then we can concentrate on procedure. I'm not going to be doing much expansion. I'm going to be stuck. I'm not going to be able to do much expansion if I keep tripping over my addition families and my subtraction families and my multiplication tables. So drill is essential to memorize, okay, critical math facts and needed terminology. Critical math facts, all right? You can't subtract and learn the procedure of borrowing if you don't know 14 minus 8. Automatically, immediately, you see 14 minus 8, your brain pops out the number, what? 6. Okay? Let alone worrying about understanding concept if all we're doing is trying to, as we struggle through each problem, we're trying to try to figure out what 14 minus 8 is. So, the importance. Couple ideas underneath this. Students cannot learn the concept if they don't know the language. How are they going to learn the language from the beginning? Memorization, drill, and then use in the classroom. Then, the second idea, students cannot learn procedure without the underlying facts. Example, borrowing. We can't learn how to borrow to do subtraction if we don't know the math facts. We can do the procedure of of borrowing the 10, moving the 10 over, and putting our 14 up, but then we're going to miss the problem because we don't know that 14 minus 8 is 6, unless we have to count on our fingers. And then it takes us 45 minutes to do our math homework, and we're missing many of them simply because simply because we don't know our math facts. Okay? How frustrating is that? A last point. Math facts should be automatic so the teacher can concentrate on both new procedures and underlying concepts. We want to be able to concentrate on new procedures and underlying concepts. Not quite enough room there. All right, we could add another point. When we don't know our math facts, it's going to be a problem for years to come, and this leads to frustration. Do you want your students to be frustrated and they're only in first grade? They're only in second grade? Of course not. But what happens when they are in third grade and they should already know their subtraction facts and they're starting to work on multiplication and they keep tripping over their math facts? So the importance of drill. Drill is essential to memorizing critical math facts and learning needed terminology. They can't learn the concept if they don't know the language that the teacher is speaking. They can't learn procedure without facts. The facts need to be automatic so the teacher can concentrate on new procedure and underlying concept. All right, and then lack of automatic math facts leads to frustration because we're constantly missing our problems because we made a quote-unquote dumb math error. Okay? So, what we're going to do next is go through how to drill. How to drill. Okay? And then we're going to talk about planning the drill, and then executing an efficient drill, and then we're going to talk about drill ideas. All right, so when we are dealing with how to drill, the first thing with how to drill is that drill must be planned in detail. Plan your drill in detail, especially if you're being graded for your math lesson project. Okay? You need to plan it in writing. Okay, so plan your drill. How do we drill? We're not even able to talk about how to drill if we don't plan it. Okay, so planning the drill, first of all, in writing. Secondly, in detail. It won't be efficient if you're fumbling around. You'll take up too much time and you'll do the same thing over and over again. You need to plan it out. All right, so components of drill. The components of drill. So when we are how to drill, the first thing we do is we have to plan it. And so then let's talk about the components of drill. Every drill should involve recitation. What's recitation?
Reciting.
It's reciting a whole table together as a class. Or it's going through the chart of steps. They are usually standing and they are reciting it. Okay? Now, this one has limited use, but it is useful when you are introducing a new topic. So the first component of drill that you're going to employ when you're drilling is recitation. Recitation is when the class literally recites or says together, all together. They're going to say the times table all together, and they're going to maybe go through a chart all together, standing up, reciting whatever content you're dealing with as a class. Recitation is useful for counting. Recitation is useful for addition families, subtraction families, and multiplication tables. Recitation is useful with steps of a new procedure. However, recitation is limited. Its use should be limited, and its effectiveness is limited. Why is its effectiveness limited? Why? We're going to use it in a limited way. We're probably going to recite something every day, kind of as a warm-up. But why is its usefulness ineffective? Why is its usefulness limited? Why is it ineffective? Why?
Because they might just have it memorized, they might not actually understand.
Well, we are shooting for memorization. We're shooting for memorization with drill so that I can work on this without having to go keep reminding them of what, 14 minus 8 is. I don't have to keep reminding them about their facts, so I can concentrate. Why? Why is it ineffective?
Not every procedure or concept will be the same. So, in a sense, they have to know it to perform different procedures.
Well, I see what you're saying. It's not the goal of math, but we're talking about drill. Recitation works for here's what I'm trying to ask. Recitation does not even work very well as a memorization tool. Why not? Can you tell me?
They might not know it on its own, they might only know it as the whole thing that they recite.
That's one thing. Have you ever had to, when you were younger, hopefully not now, when you're alphabetizing? What do you have to do? No, seriously, this is an example. You have to go A, B, C, D. And we don't want that. That's true. That was not what I was thinking of. That is a good point. Did you understand what she's saying? Yes. Recitation can be ineffective because you don't want them to have to go through the entire times table or go through the entire counting procedure to figure out what 3 times 9 is, right? And that's true. They may not be able to figure out an answer without going through the whole sing-songy whatever in their head. That's true. And what Jessica said is also true. They're not understanding it. But for drill, our goal is memorization for drill. Now that's not our goal in math class, absolutely not, and I think you've gotten that. It is our goal for drill because we want to memorize those families, we want to memorize those multiplication tables so that we can understand the underlying concept. And recitation does nothing for understanding. You are correct, right? And it does nothing for procedure. Well, it might help if they're stuck and they don't understand. It might be a crutch or a stopgap. But our goal for drill is memorization. Why is it ineffective even as a memorization technique? It comes down to 2 words. Well, actually, 1 word. We're doing class participation instead of individual participation. So what happens when we're reciting?
Some kids just listen to the other.
Some kids are lip syncing. They're listening to the loudest student. They're listening to the fastest student. They're listening to the student who doesn't need the recitation anyways. Okay, so recitation is a drill component, but it's limited. We use it for counting. We use it when we're introducing math tables and when we're reviewing math tables or addition and subtraction families, but it's limited in its effectiveness. Yes, they won't understand it. And yes, we don't want them to have to go through the whole 9 yards. If they're trying to figure out how to alphabetize and they're in the R's, we don't want them to have to start at A and go all the way through, right? But even more important than that, it doesn't involve individual, and the word is participation. And participation is a big part of drill. So we're going to use recitation every day, especially to introduce, and especially if we're doing something in primary such as counting, or when we are learning a new family or a new table, but it's limited in its effectiveness because it doesn't require individual participation So the individual could just be standing there. Well, maybe some of it's soaking in because they are hearing it. All right, but it is limited in its effectiveness because it's limited in participation. There's not a lot of individual responsibility. What happens when there's no individual responsibility? There's less learning, okay? Individual responsibility is critical for learning, all right? That's part of the weakness of ACE, is the responsibility, okay? They're not responsible to the teacher directly, and so they can get by with just filling in the answers and scoring their page and correcting their page. It lacks in responsibility. Okay, so recitation. You understand what it is? It's literally everybody standing up and reciting tables, counting, or going through procedures, going off of a chart, reciting it, standing up, and saying it together as a class. All right, it has uses for counting, for introducing new tables, introducing new steps, and so forth. But it is limited. The next component of drill. What's the next and most obvious component of drill? Flashcards. So when you are planning your drill, you need to plan something to recite, and then you need to plan something to some set of flashcards. Flashcards. Flashcards are used to primarily drill math facts, such as the addition families, such as the subtraction families, such as the times tables, and so forth. Okay? So, we will use flashcards. We can use flashcards for memorization of formulas. We can use flashcards for memorization of terms. All right, and what is the advantage of flashcards? I'm going to be working my way to the least effective, more effective, and so forth. So we have flashcards as our second component of drill. Flashcards are just that, where we have problems, definitions, terms, or formulas that we're going to show and ask answers for. Flashcards can be used for recitation. Flashcards can be used for games. Flashcards can be used for individual drilling. Flashcards can even be used for mental math. Advantages of flashcards. The first advantage is variety. Because it's not all written out as a chart or as a table that has a particular order or as steps that have a particular order, we can shuffle the flashcards. Variety. Flashcards are also adaptable. What you need to do while you're student teaching, you think you don't have time to make visuals now? You will have even less time when you student teach and when you actually teach. So what you want to do is make a lot of blank flashcards that you can use as needed and that you can change. Right? You can, the variety there is important. You can shuffle them, and then also not only is it variety in how you can mix them up, they're also more practical because you can make blank ones and adapt them to what you need. So you're going to want a lot of blank flashcards because then you can put on them what your class needs to review. You could even use them in a different class, like science or something like that. I don't know. You want different sizes, different shapes. You can make them as part of your theme. They're very adaptable. So the advantage of flashcards is the variety, both in how you can mix them up, change the order, but also how you can change the content. So you're going to want to make some flashcard sets. and you can make them different shapes and different sizes and adapt them to different uses. However, when you are using flashcards, you want the size to be comfortable so you can flash them quickly. You want the shape to be comfortable as far as flashing them. You also want to have them tabbed so you can have them facing the same direction. Or if they're a particular shape, maybe you might make a shape like your theme. Somebody had lily pads in their theme folder. If they are a particular shape, then you know they're all facing the same direction. If they're a rectangle, whether it's a horizontal rectangle or you use them as a vertical rectangle, you're going to want to cut off one of the corners and tab them in some way so that you can keep them facing the same direction. Flashcards are multi-purpose. Flashcards are also better because you can use them for different purposes. Recitation, you can use them to individual at their seats can do their own flashcards and so forth. So flashcards are a big part of drill, but they're not the only part. The next component of drill is competition games. Competition games. Competition is a good motivator, but competition has its downsides. What would be the downside of competition? There are three. What would you say one would be? Attitude. Unsportsmanlike conduct cannot be tolerated. Attitudes. What else?
It may kind of be unfair since some kids may not be on the same level. I don't know, some learn better than others.
Okay, that's true. That wasn't one that I'm thinking of. So you have to plan for that. That's another reason why drill has to be particularly planned. You have different levels. So you're going to have unsportsmanlike conduct if you have the teams divided unfairly and everybody knows that row one's going to win. Well, what do? You move bodies around. Or what do in your game is you make sure you have similarly paired students. Fast student with fast student. Slow student with slow student. You try to make it fair. Yes, so that isn't, the unsportsmanlike conduct and the attitude can be a problem. So you do have to make it fair. What else? Yes?
They can be time consuming.
Time consuming is my number one. Number one is time consuming. Before you know it, you've had so much fun playing your game that you have 5 minutes left of class. Well, shouldn't be that bad, but you don't have time to do your lesson, and it happens very easily. So you want to plan your game on a review day where you don't have a new concept. I would not play a game on a new concept day. And by new concept, I mean brand new. You do have to teach a lot of concepts as if they were new, but when you have a brand new or a difficult concept, no game. So the downfall, the dark side of drilling with flashcard or with using games during drill is time consuming. Time will get away from you. So you have to plan it on an appropriate day. And then the sportsmanlike attitude was number 3. What's left? Yes?
Only the kids who know the answers would be the ones participating.
Oh, participation? That's true too. We could probably put that with this whole idea of the unsportsmanlike conduct because games have to be planned, but there's something else.
It gets them really riled up.
Yes. Classroom chaos. So they are going to consume time. They're going to develop into classroom chaos. And you have to watch for the unsportsmanlike attitude. The competition can't get out of hand. Whether we're talking students getting angry at other students or students getting frustrated and not participating and so forth. So it's going to consume a lot of time. It can very easily become classroom chaos, too loud, too noisy, rouse them up so they're not ready. You want the drill to prepare them for class, not unprepare them for class. And then the idea of competition can become unsportsmanlike, and you do have to plan it, all right? So that's why we said, first of all, how to drill. The first point was planning. The second point is components. So we have recitation. That one is the one that is the most criticized, and rightly so. It is the most ineffective. Then we have flashcards. Flashcards are a good drill component. Flashcards can be efficiently used, but if you don't plan it, you're going to be in a rut, whether it's a recitation rut or a flashcard rut. And then games. Games can be good motivation, but they're not good for memorization, are they? But they are good for review. Then, the last component of drill is mental math. Mental math is also not, the goal of mental math is not so much memorization. We're going to memorize with recitation. We're going to memorize with flashcard practice. Mental math is to sharpen their minds and warm them up for the lesson. What is mental math? First of all, mental math is where they must do more than one computation without seeing it. They're not seeing it on the blackboard. They're not seeing it on a flashcard. It's a multi-step mental computation, mental math. Multi-step and entirely in their mind. They're not seeing it on the flashcard. They're not seeing it on the visual. They're not seeing it on the blackboard. They're only hearing it, and they have to do a multi-step mental computation just hearing it. And the purpose here will sharpen their minds and prepare them for math class. It works very well as a warm-up. It's not really memorization. We're beyond the memorization there. So every time you do a drill, it needs to involve 3 of the 4. Recitation, flashcards, mental math. Okay, and there's all kinds of ideas on different things that you can do. Mental computation, probably examples of it would be where you have a flashcard and you tell them additional steps. Maybe you hold up the 3 plus 2 flashcard and you tell them to add 1 more in first grade. Keep it simple, something they can do quickly and accurately. But they're not seeing the +1, are they? And it has a 2-step computation. So it can be as simple as that. You hold up the 3 plus 2 and you tell them add 1 more. Or you then hold up the 4 plus 3 and you don't even tell them again. They have to automatically add 1 more. Or you tell them a few times and you stop even saying it and they're doing it in their mind. You want to sharpen their minds. This is also a problem with ACE and homeschooling, is that we don't have that oral combination type thing, which is mental math. We don't have the oral recitation. We don't have the competition. And so many of you will maybe homeschool your own children, or you will go to a small school where you'll have what we have here with our learning center, not with our traditional classrooms. And so what do you have to do? You have to do this even if there's only 2 students. And especially your own children. You're going to have to go above and beyond the paces of ACE, above and beyond even the video of Bob Jones or Rebecca. Becca's pretty good with this, but guess who has to do the drill? Mom or a teacher, right? So you've got to do that. Public education does not drill, which is fine for your smarter, sharper students. It's not fine for your average student, okay? So components of drill. Recitation, that one is the least useful and is under the most criticism, and somewhat rightly so. Then we have flashcards. Flashcards are the standby of drill, aren't they? You want to use them effectively. Then we have games. Competition is a good motivator, but we had competition cautions, right? You want to make sure you don't use up too much time. You want to make sure that your classroom doesn't dissolve into chaos, right? And you also want to make sure that your competition is controlled. No unsportsmanlike conduct. And you want to make sure that your teams are fair. It's not, you've all been on the short end of a competition stick where you knew you weren't going to win, and that's no fun. Or you knew you couldn't beat so-and-so and you didn't even try. Okay, so that goes back to frustration. Okay, you don't want your students to be frustrated. They're going to be frustrated enough anyways with the concepts and the procedures. All right, so plan your drill. Components of drill. Then, characteristics of a good drill. Remember, first semester we made this statement, and this still applies. And this goes along with the fact that you have to plan it. Drill on purpose for a purpose. And if you're not planning it, you're not drilling it on purpose, and you're not going to accomplish very much. So drill on purpose for a purpose. So 2 characteristics of a good drill, both of them with E's. Effective and efficient. Effective. Next to that, keep in mind the goal of drill is twofold: memorization and practice. We can't really get a lot of practice done if we don't have the memorization taken care of first. So we want the memorization. Memorization, not so much of steps and procedure, memorization of facts and terminology. Okay, so effective. We have 2 goals for our drill: memorization and practice. With memorization, that's where we're dealing with automatic. Okay? And practice is necessary for us to master a procedure. And I think the mental math, of course, is practicing it, and practicing it without seeing it. So those are our 2 goals. Effective drill has the goal of memorization. You want your math facts automatic, and also you want your drill to practice problems, to sharpen their minds both on paper, flashcards, games, and practicing problems. But you also want them to be able to do things mentally, more and more mentally. There's a balance between them being able to do things mentally and showing their work. And that balance is all on how old they are and what you're learning. All right, so effective. We want to memorize and practice. So to be effective, we have 3 characteristics. First is appropriate in context. Your drill needs to be appropriate in context. I have some ideas under that. Then appropriate in level and appropriate in duration. So let's talk about appropriate in context. Drill has to be appropriate in context. First of all, it needs to go along with that day's lesson. So it's in context of that day's lesson. Then it also has to be in context of the students themselves. We want to address that class, the problems that class is having. So it's appropriate to the lesson, it's appropriate to the students, their level, of course, we're talking about that next, but it's appropriate to, it's in context of what problems those students are having. So it's in context of the lesson, it's in context of problem areas. We don't want to be drilling something that's unnecessary. So it needs to be appropriate in context. That means it needs to apply to the lesson and it needs to apply to the students. Then, appropriate in level. Appropriate in level. Drill should be neither too easy or too hard. So, if the drill is too easy, it's pointless. It's not accomplishing anything. Just like when you get on the treadmill in the workout room, you are accomplishing something, but you're not going anywhere. Okay? So you want it to be appropriate in level, not too easy, and then secondly, not too hard. If it's too hard, you're going to have lack of participation, and you're going to have frustration, and you're not going to be getting anywhere. If it's too easy, you're wasting your time. If you're the 5th grade math student teacher and you drill 1 foot equals 12 inches, that's an extreme example, but that's inappropriate in level, right? If you're the 5th and 6th grade teacher and a lot of your flashcards are 1 times whatever or 10 times whatever, that's inappropriate in level. Then appropriate in duration. 2 ideas with duration. Duration of class time and duration of time spent. Duration of class time. That, of course, refers to how many minutes you're taking up in each class period, and that is dependent on the lesson. It has to be dependent on the lesson. If you have a review lesson, you can spend more time on drill, you can have a game, and even take up 10 or 15 minutes. But if you have a new concept or a confusing concept, you want to scale the drill back. Don't eliminate it altogether, but scale it back. So appropriate in duration of class time, then appropriate in duration of time spent. Back to the 1 foot equals 12 inches illustration. Once we know our measurement facts and we're in grade 5, we are no longer going to be drilling measurement facts. Or if we do, we're going to up the content. We're going to show them the flashcard 1 foot equals blank inches, and we're going to change it. We're going to say 3/4 of a foot equals how many inches. And we're requiring them to have a challenge. You want the drill to be challenging. I guess that goes back up to appropriate in level. You don't want it too easy. You don't want it too hard. So after a while, you're going to stop drilling the 2 times tables, aren't you? Now, this maybe doesn't apply so much to primary because you're going to be at the primary level and you are really needing to spend time on memorization of addition families, subtraction families, and simple multiplication. But it still applies. We're not going to drill the easy stuff all the time. Okay? So effective drill, you're going to make the most use of your time. Then efficient drill. Efficient. By efficient, I mean you move quickly from one thing to the next. You are learning, you are practicing, you are accomplishing something, but you're doing it in a timely manner. So what you have to do is, it needs, I guess a word here would also be sufficient. So when we were talking about effective, I wanted you to say that it was appropriate in context, appropriate in level, appropriate in duration. Now we're talking about efficient. So it needs to be sufficient practice with math facts. Then it needs to be sufficient variety. So that means you're doing something a different way or a different order. Okay? Then it also needs to be sufficient warm-up for that day's lesson. So efficient has the idea of using your class time well. You're moving quickly from recitation to flashcards to mental math, back to recitation, and so you're accomplishing something in the time that you have. So you need sufficient practice with your math facts. every day. You need sufficient variety so you're not in a drill rut. Believe me, I've taught 5th grade math a lot, taught 6th grade math a lot, and guess what I would get into? Drill rut, where I did the same order. I was really pretty good about not doing the same thing, but I do the same order. So sufficient practice with math facts, sufficient variety, and then sufficient warm-up for that day's, or sufficient warm-up for that day's lesson. So you need variety, especially variety between those 3 main components. If you look back up of the 4 components, which ones do you think are the 3 that should be done every day? Recitation, flashcards, mental math. Of those, then the game was number 4. Game and game will have to be avoided on heavy-duty teaching days. Which other one would be the next to go? Remember, recitation, flashcards, game, mental math. Game, we're going to get rid of a lot. What's the next one to go? Recitation. Does not need to be done every day. But you want to always do flashcards and mental math. Okay? All right. Executing an efficient drill is where we will pick up next class period.